To get back on this Trump thing for 1 second, can you only say that it's a negative thing if it's considered a disorder as opposed to having traits? I mean, isn't it just as dangerous to possess these traits? Just because he's successful doesn't mean he won't hurt others per se, being in office like you're talking about.
I mean, I don't want to stray into politics, but when it came out in 2016, I was in a different perspective personally, and my understanding of narcissism was different. I think it is probably good and necessary for anybody who wants that role to have highly pronounced narcissistic traits, even the grandiosity that is one of the 9 traits of narcissism that defines narcissism. If you don't have a grandiose vision for your country, you don't have a narcissistic will to drive that forward, do you belong in office?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and also if you're too empathetic, let's say, you'll fold at every turn. There's also something probably to be said about being harsh and only thinking of yourself and not spending any time thinking of the consequences for others.
There's something to be said for that in certain contexts, definitely. Right. You can't have, we'll stick with the president, but it could be any political role anywhere in the world. But let's stick with the president of America because it's an easy one to wrap our heads around. It's so frequently portrayed in mainstream media and fiction. The last thing you would want in a country of 330 million people with so many different ethnicities and so many different perspectives and drives is indecisiveness. That's the country would collapse. So you need where's that decisiveness going to come from, if not from a somewhat delusional adherence, grandiose adherence to a vision that is also somewhat entitled. Now, you don't want that to become abuse. You don't want that to become, well, we're going to abuse other countries because we're the best in the world. But for a country to think that it's special and good is not, in my opinion, a bad thing. And for the leader of the country to think that it is special and good is not a bad thing. So when I enter this argument, if I was going to discuss it with clinicians, I'd be like, where's the line that we say this is neurotic? Now you're hurting yourself. Now you're hurting your foreign policy is hurting your public image. Your people hate you. So we got to draw that line with a degree of nuance.
Right. So let's stay away now from the disordered people and just stick with the traits, because most people, you're saying more people have that than the actual disorder. So can someone be born a narcissist, or is this something that, I mean, you talked a little bit about it with the personality disorder, but their environment sort of creates them into this character, so to speak?
I think, so in psychology, it's the nature-nurture debate, and it's gone on for decades now. Are you born this way? Are you entrained into this? And even that can become a political conversation. So left-leaning people would say it's trauma. Right-leaning people would say you're born this way. However, we now live in the age of epigenetics, so we know full well that in no instance is it purely one or the other. In the age, unless you reject epigenetics and its claims, which is your environmental pressures are causing genes that otherwise would be dormant to start expressing themselves. So I had some genetic material that would lead me to psychopathy. Had I been raised in a lovely, sweet and quiet home, we would never have seen it. However, I was raised in a brutal environment with a drunk for a father, and my mother's physically abusive, and I have to join a gang by I'm 12 or I'm going to get stabbed to death. Guess what? That latent genetic material this is a really geneticists be pulling their hair out right now because I'm coloring with crayons, but something like this, something like this is happening. It's nobody can really say. All I know that would be useful for you and useful to the viewers is from the research I've seen up until now, psychopathy seems to have a more genetic component than narcissism. As the technology develops, because it's still fairly new, we'll know more in the next 50 years or so.
Right. So it is a possibility that people become narcissists as a defense mechanism.
I mean, the thing is with narcissism, the reason why I and others would push back on the genetic element is there are specific substructures to the personality that really require that you learn that after you're born. It has all of the hallmarks of a learned response. You need an audience. You need to learn that love is adulation. Like to a narcissist, genuine, vulnerable, adult love is not only meaningless, it's somewhat horrifying. It's like, I love you because you're a person. I'm not a person. Ugh, I don't want your love. I want you to worship me or fear me, but I am above you. I'm always above you. If you come at me like this, I'm going to be disgusted. I'm going to be offended, and I'm going to hurt you for that. You need punishing because you broke the system. That's learned. That has to be learned. I don't think there's anything in genetics that would cause a person to be born like that. With psychopathy, if you said there's less empathy, this person's sadistic, they're more prone to aggression, they have lower impulse control. Yes, and we could selectively breed animals for that. It's been done. They've done it with foxes in Russia, so we know that that's possible. The narcissism thing, I really doubt it.